Not HasanAbi being a supporter of French Canadians. Listen, I'm generally in support of all anti-imperialist indigenous movements. Okay, and the Francophone Canadians, as we all know, are indigenous to the land. As a matter of fact, they need to have a separate category. They've been screwed over even worse than the First Nation Canadians. Okay, the greatest crime. Tories blew a 20-point lead. NDP collapsed, but might flip a couple ridings. NDP and Tory leader ridings are up for grabs. They never even had a chance because the federal NDP let the Liberals take up the anti-Trump torch. Yeah. Canadian duopoly is upon us. New Brunswick is a tiny province and historically extremely anti-union, anti-labor because it's basically owned by an oil company, Irving. Like, literally, Irving owns almost every print outlet. I mean, there's 30 more minutes until we figure out what happens, right? All the polls close.
It is 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are live from the atrium of the Toronto Broadcasting Centre for 36 days. Federal leaders did their best to sell their visions of the future to Canadians. It all comes down to this. I'm Rosemary Barton.
I mean, this is literally, this is yet another indication of Canada's status as America's hat, low key, but not even low key, but high key. And what I mean by that is because Trump gave a ginormous W to the Liberals by behaving in the way that he does, by creating nationalist sentiment in a country like Canada that rallied around the flag of the Liberal Party. Obviously, Trudeau was insanely unpopular. So any kind of fresh face that you could slap on that's like remotely competent, that hasn't been ripped apart by reactionary media, was going to be much more favorable. And his approval ratings, like the approval ratings of the Liberal Party, skyrocketed as a consequence of Poilievre's allegiance, seemingly, to the growing reactionary right-wing movement in America, and in his initial allegiance before Donald Trump started talking about how Canada is actually a part of America, is the 51st state, ended up cooking him.
Huge amount of data and a huge amount of votes from Quebec all the way over to Alberta and to territories. That round of votes will come fast and furious, and things will start to look
they have a politician called Polar Bear.
The direction of this country going
Pierre
forward.
Polar Bear.
You can see there, though, at the bottom of your screen, that is where we are at now, with Atlantic Canada results coming in. 22 leading and elected for the Liberals, Conservatives at 10, and the Bloc Québécois at 1, and that's because only one Quebec riding has closed at this hour, and that's in Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine. Okay, we do want to show you one person who was re-elected handily tonight, and that is Dominic LeBlanc, re-elected in the riding of Beauséjour. As I said, handily for Dominic LeBlanc, of course, a cabinet minister under Mark Carney right now. And there he is tonight. Dominic LeBlanc, thanks for joining us.
Quebec needs to separate.
Hi, Rosemary. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. First of all, I want to ask you about where the Liberal Party is at coming out of Atlantic Canada here. Leading or elected, we've got you at 22, the Conservatives at 10. Those weren't quite the numbers that we understood that the Liberals wanted to see at this stage of the evening.
I think that's fair, but there are a lot of votes still to be counted. I've been looking at some of the results in some of the New Brunswick or Nova Scotia ridings, and there are still a lot of polls to be counted. And my experience tells me often the polls that are slow to come in are the ones where there was a very heavy turnout in some advanced polls,
sure,
or other big turnouts on election day today.
Not HasanAbi being a supporter of French Canadians. Listen, I'm generally in support of all anti-imperialist indigenous movements. Okay, and the Francophone Canadians, as we all know, are indigenous to the land. As a matter of fact, they need to have a separate category. They've been screwed over even worse than the First Nation Canadians. Okay, the greatest crime. That's why I'm in favor of the Québécois separatist movement. They are the legacy Canadiens. As a matter of fact, they should overtake the entirety of Canada and force every Canadian to speak French all the time. No more Anglophone Canada. Why am I saying all of this? When basically last year I was making fun of Le Bloc. Why am I? Because Denis Villeneuve, I found out that he's French Canadian. I found out that he's a Québécois, which is why my attitude shifted. I'm sorry. That's how easy it is to sell me. Okay. Now, Felix Lengyel, Le Lion of Laval, is also he is also a French Canadian, which is why I was maintaining the position that I was maintaining an anti-Quebecer stance. But my attitude has shifted now because of Denis Villeneuve.
You're right. We should ask ourselves what that means in some of the bigger provinces like Ontario or even British Columbia.
I did notice there, Dominic LeBlanc, that you used the M word. You used the word majority. Is that an expectation, a real expectation for you tonight?
Why is Jeffrey Sachs glazing Mark Carney? That's weird.
Quietly, and Canada's not going down
quietly. It's his student. Oh, God. Oh, no.
And my student, Mark Carney, who's now Prime Minister of Canada, said today, no, Canada remains Canada. Don't even think about it. And I believe him, and I think he's going to probably remain Prime Minister also in view of the upcoming psychological warfare that's going to come. And Canada's not going down quietly. And my student,
Mark Carney's been glazed by every neo-lib in the Western world? Yeah, which is why I'm shocked that Jeffrey Sachs is also glazing him. I thought Jeffrey Sachs was no longer the annoying. He normally is pretty good, but Jeffrey Sachs is a academic who is perhaps most responsible for shock doctrine in the dissolution of the USSR, who changed his ways and has become an outspoken anti-imperialist.
Riding and the St. John's East riding, so those are still in play. Part of the problem is this. We have more than 70% of the vote counted in Newfoundland and Labrador. We've just hit the 50% mark in Prince Edward Island, and we're below 50% in New Brunswick, in Nova Scotia, and only just over a third of the vote counted in New Brunswick. So it makes it very difficult to call some of the ridings when you're still...
Didn't Mark Carney also say that, like, we're going to stop Israel or some shit? Am I crazy? Did I hallucinate? And then immediately back away from that position? Say about Israel. He said, well, recently he also said condemning Israeli blockade on food, but that doesn't really mean anything. But I'm pretty sure he called it a genocide and then very quickly backtracked. Like, that was for a brief moment. Said he didn't hear the word genocide. Canada is against Israel. Brother. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. There's no country in the Western world that is actually, like, and their politicians is actually against Israel, with the exception of Ireland, okay? Let me tell you, okay? You are sipping on some Kool-Aid. You're down in some Kool-Aid. Oh, Spain. True. Spain. I say Spain is one exception. In the French federal debate, Jagmeet Singh challenges Mark Carney on Gaza. Why don't you call things as they are? This is a genocide. Carney claims that the term politicizes the situation. We know that if you can't name a genocide, you definitely won't stop it. South Africa? We're calling South Africa a Western nation now? That's crazy. I didn't know that. I had no idea. I didn't know the dynamics should change this dramatically and this rapidly. What's next? What's another Western nation that's anti-Israel? Brazil? Just countries in the global South also Western.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. I'm aware. This is why we have an arms embargo.
Oh, and then he came out and was like, oh, it's not a genocide. I didn't hear that he said genocide. That's what happened, right?
Last night at the rally, there was a protester who, it was hard to hear, I believe said, there's a genocide in Gaza. One of the first protester that interrupted your speech said, there's a genocide in Gaza. And I believe your response was, I'm aware, that's why there's an arms embargo. So I just wanted to clarify what you heard. If you said, I'm aware, what were you being aware of? Are you conceding it's a genocide in Gaza?
I didn't hear that. Actually, I didn't hear that word. You were there, I guess. And yeah.
Man, these guys are so afraid. They're so scared, dude. Holy shit.
Ground here and pick up ground here because the chances for targets are narrow around the prairies and in the north, and then a whole lot could be riding on British Columbia. But They just got one more
Netanyahu
seat
personally
on their
demanded a
quest there, and that is
retraction.
because
Oh God!
the CBC Decision Desk has projected elected Joanne Thompson in the riding of St. John's East, the fisheries minister in the Mark Carney government, and the last Liberal incumbent to seek re-election is returning to Ottawa, and the CBC's Carolyn Stokes is standing by at Joanne Thompson's headquarters. Carolyn, take it away.
Hi, David. Yes, I'm hearing that CBC is projecting that Joanne Thompson has held on to her seat, but actually not many people here in the room have heard that yet. We've had no reaction to this yet, so no cheering or anything, so we're just, here we go. Okay, so this room, very, very happy people here. We're expecting Joanne Thompson to come out now and give a speech, lots of selling, and a pretty good showing, it looks, for Joanne Thompson tonight, holding on to the seat, heading back to Ottawa, and with not as many Liberal colleagues from this province as before because of the loss in long-range mountains, and Clifford Small holding on to his seat. So, yeah, this is the situation here in St. John's East. A lot of happy people. David.
All right, Carolyn, thank you very much. Joanne Thompson beating David Brazel, a former leader of the Provincial Conservative Party, Mary Shortall, the president of the NDP. Yeah. Rosie, I was getting texts from people there with Carolyn.
Bro, I'm sorry. This is so boring. Oh, my God. I don't know enough. I just don't know enough. I'm sorry, Canuck, HasanAbi heads. Like, I want to cover this, but it's so difficult for me to do it. I just don't know enough. I don't know the drama. And Canadian politics is so boring. Like, when we find out more later, I'll get back into it. Okay? Like, it's not boring, but I mean, it's boring, but also not in a good way either.